In today's video, I'm talking about my Vanguard portfolio. I've recently opened an account and I did a video step by step how to do that, as well as all the basics. And I've spent the last week or so just doing some research and having a look into the fund or funds that I want to invest in. So I just thought I'd talk through my strategy, my thoughts, and why I have invested in the fund that I have. Now, in my account opening, you'll have seen that you have to choose a particular fund to open the account. And for that, I went with the LifeStrategy fund, which was the 100% weighting for stocks or equities. Now, I have changed my mind on that. I've kept the £100 that I first put in the LifeStrategy, but the fund that I have chosen to invest in is the FTSE Global All Cap Index Fund. And the main reason for that choice is that I wanted a global fund, so global exposure to markets from across the world, because if something terrible was to happen in one particular market in the UK, for example, then I wanted that spread, that diversification, and also exposure to some of the more emerging markets. So that was the decision that I wanted global exposure so that I could diversify the risks. I also wanted to make sure that there was a spread of sectors. So I know that the UK market, the FTSE 100, doesn't necessarily have that much technology, whereas that's mainly in the US. Now, I accept that, I could have just put it all into the S&P 500, but on balance, I just thought that was another benefit of investing in a global fund. I also think it will help to reduce the risk of exposure to one particular currency, so another plus point for a global fund. So as part of my research, I found that there were three main funds on Vanguard that would give me that global exposure. So there is the LifeStrategy fund, which is the fund that I'd used to open the account and something that I'd probably heard a lot more of in my research online and watching YouTube videos. So that does have the global exposure, but what I found is that had more of a UK bias. So I think it's 20% was invested in the UK, which is not necessarily representative of the market as a whole in terms of the weighting. And as I understand it, although it is a fund, it is more actively managed comparative to the all cap fund that I've gone for. Sort of the way that the LifeStrategy operates is that it's almost a fund of funds. So the LifeStrategy fund is made up of different Vanguard funds. So you have got that global spread, but there is the UK weighting. And it looks a really good fund. I might still keep my money in there and may add to it. But because of the UK bias, I sort of wanted more exposure to the US. I decided that wasn't the fund that I was going to go for. And also I'd compared the performance over the last couple of years, and the fund that I went for and the very closely matched ETF were slightly better performers, probably because of that UK bias. So yeah, after much research and reflection, I decided I wasn't going to put the bulk of my funds into the LifeStrategy fund. So that left me a choice between the VWRL, so the FTSE All World UCITS ETF, or what I eventually went for, which is the FTSE Global All Cap Index Fund. But basically, after reading that, I came to the conclusion that it doesn't really matter which one of these funds that you choose, because it's already great that you're looking to invest, first of all, that you're using a passively managed fund and going to be doing that regularly, and that really is the key. So I don't think there's much between them. Even the LifeStrategy fund is also a good choice, and in some ways that makes it more difficult to make that choice. So once I'd reached that decision that I was going to for the global exposure and not the LifeStrategy fund, that left a choice between the two. I'll just run through some of the things that it compared. So really the decision came between the All World ETF and the Global All Cap Index. And, looking at the benchmark comparison here, the All World ETF tracks the All World Index, but the Global All Cap Fund tracks the Global All Cap Index. This table here is really useful in terms of showing some of the differences, or not really any difference at all between them. And what I thought was a good feature of the All Cap Index was the 5% weighting in the small cap companies. So market capitalization is the value of the company that's traded, and you do that by calculating the total number of outstanding shares by the value of the shares at the time, and small cap tend to be valued at under $1 billion. So yeah, I mean, they're still listed companies, but on the smaller end, and I just thought that was quite a good advantage because it's only a 5%, but at least you've got that exposure as well. I know that the small cap fund is a separate fund that you can look to on Vanguard, which might be something that I look to do, but at least that had that in here as well. Given the fact that they're really similar exposure, the performance has followed a similar course as well, so there wasn't too much to choose between that, and the fees as well were fairly similar. So from looking at that research, I basically concluded that it didn't really matter which one of those I did go for, because I think it would meet my objectives in terms of a fairly steady performance and global exposure. And I decided to go for the all cap index fund for a couple of reasons. The fact that it had that small cap exposure, but also I was watching her Penny Potentials video. I'll link it in the description. And she mentioned that she had been putting cash into her Vanguard fund, say £100, but with the ETF, because of the change in value, it would not sort of buy parts of that. You could only buy a full sort of one share in the ETF. So if that was valued, I don't know, at £90 and you wanted to put £100 in, the £10 difference would go into your cash section of your portfolio. So given that with an index fund you can sort of buy them sort of fractionally, I thought, given there's not much between them, if that means that I can just put in whatever I want, the £100, the £150, maybe that was something in favour, as well as the small cap exposure for the global all market index fund. So that was another sort of useful tip, particularly as a Vanguard newbie. Given that I did choose the global all cap index fund, I just thought it'd just be worth spending a little bit of time just going through the key information about that fund. So just looking at it here, it seeks, as I said, it seeks to track the performance of the FTSE Global All Cap Index. It's a risk profile of 5 on Vanguard, which is the same as the other two that I'd mentioned. The ongoing charges is 0.23% over the year. And you can see the past performance there in terms of the fund's performance versus the index, and it's really pretty similar and not so bad over the last couple of years. It's quite new, so there was nothing in the 2016. In terms of the biggest exposures, there's no surprises there. It's Apple with 3.17%, Microsoft 2.57%, Amazon 2%, and then Facebook, Tesla, Alphabet, a couple of others that you can see. So, you know, it's still the big US companies that you would anticipate, and software and technology being the biggest sectors. So I just think it's a really good way of getting that exposure, and for somebody who's so new to investing, I think that's, you know, the main thing. Invested just under a week ago, and there's a small percentage return so far. In terms of my strategy going forward, I've decided that the bulk of my investments will be going into this fund each month, but I'm still a little bit undecided on whether I'm going to go for some other funds. I've got a very small amount just as I was dabbling since I opened my account a good few weeks ago. So the Asia Pacific Fund, the Small Cap Fund, I'd already mentioned the LifeStrategy. So I've got a little bit sitting there, and I can just see when I go into my account how that's performing. But I'm still deciding whether I do need that difference. Oh, I've got the S&P 500 as well. So, you know, I've got several on the go, but very small amounts. So decided that the bulk's going into this one, but I still am a little bit unsure the weightings and whether I'm going to just go for having them more than one or just really simplifying it. So, you know, I'll do my research, take stock, see what's going on. But if you've got any ideas or comments about my strategy or things that you think I should be looking at, please let me know. And I hope that somebody found that helpful. The article, I think, is really useful just to go side by side in terms of everything to think about. But really the conclusion is that it doesn't really matter. If you're going for that global exposure, any of those 3 funds would be really good. But the LifeStrategy does have that UK weighting. So let's see how I get on. I'll probably do a portfolio update to see exactly how the funds perform and let's see whether I have gone for some of those other funds and maybe some weightings. And I'm also be doing a trading 2-on-2 update, which is not so good given what's happened in the US market over the last couple of weeks. But I hope you found that useful. Thanks again for watching. Please subscribe if you can. It would really help me out. I'm so new to this and learning so much and enjoying it. So I would really be grateful if you could subscribe and join me along that journey. Thank you.